Jaren, welcome to the show. Glad to have you.
Hey, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. It's been a while since we've collaborated.
Yeah. I've been looking to see what you've been up to. I know I've seen that you've been traveling, and if I'm not mistaken, you don't live in America, but you're from America, right?
Yep, that's exactly it. So I'm joining the gringo bandwagon of all the expats coming down to Mexico. Locally, it's been covered in the news quite a bit lately, so I'll actually be doing more topics on my YouTube channel regarding that very subject. But I have a unique perspective because I actually lived in Mexico previously. I lived down here for 4 years. I did most of my undergraduate studies down here and actually played a little bit of baseball for a private school. So for me, it's an interesting perspective outside of the mass gringo expat group because I
Yeah.
do have experiences of how Mexico was before smartphones. Everyone had the internet. When I came down here the first time, not even people really had computers in their homes, and now it's not too far behind the U.S. and in many areas because the U.S. is crumbling right now. Uh, in certain neighborhoods, there's certain pockets of technology that I'd say are superior to the U.S. that I'm noticing. So the world's changing very rapidly in front of my eyes. So I can definitely comment on that type of information, my experiences, what led me here, and why I'm living here now.
Yeah, because one of the reasons I bring that up is because there's more and more conversations going on and narratives around people having multiple passports, being
Yeah.
flexible to where you can be adaptable across borders. And I think that was really revealed over the past couple of years when things were shut down. There's travel restrictions, but there are restrictions in one place, but not another place. And if you were a person that could move individually between places easily, or more easily, or for on a personal level, but also on a business level, there were opportunities presented to you that might not have been available to someone that was geographically isolated. So I think that's really cool that you're doing that. So it sounds like you have a background there, but how are you viewing that living abroad in the world as it is today?
I absolutely love it. So prior to coming here, I'd lived in California for a while, and I did the typical thing that most Americans do. As I alluded to earlier, I had come down to Mexico, spent most of my undergraduate education here, went back to the U.S., got a master's degree, started working in the defense industry, and then worked a handful of corporate contracts, tried my hand at consulting, and then just fell into, eventually got to like middle level manager, director type level, got into the whole corporate machine, and I was doing really well. I was living in Southern California, had a nice high-rise apartment in San Diego. I was driving a sports car. Still got to travel maybe once a quarter or so. I was starting to go to new countries, but prior to that, it was a grind through all my 20s. It was a grind, and my income kept going up. Or I'd take a couple times big risks, and then I'd lose it all, and I'd have to start again. And a lot of young guys do that, but I realized that the more and more dialed in and disciplined I got, I kept making the right decisions, and I kept getting the outcome that was not ideal for me. And that's what brings a lot of guys to these types of channels or content or topics. Is I hear this a lot from my coaching clients or guys that join my private communities. They say, Jaren, I've done everything right, but I'm not getting the results. It's like, okay, well, you're doing everything right as defined by someone else, and the results that you want are defined by you. There's a disconnect there. So we need to start. In my communities, we use the analogy of unplugging, starting to step outside of the matrix and creating a life for yourself. So, although I do live in Mexico, I've largely created a bubble for myself. I have a very tight inner circle. A lot of them are digital relationships that end up being analog. Fortunately, I've got a handful of good guy friends down here. And as far as if anyone who follows my channel, the dating topics, I've got that area of my life handled. Let's say I'm very
Yeah.
pleased with those results I'm getting. And just in terms of having the flexibility and the freedom, that is something that is completely underrated. And it wasn't easy to get there. Even before the whole pandemic thing happened, that was just the straw that broke the camel's back for me. Again, living in Southern California, and they shut everything down. And at first, like, okay, 2 weeks flatten the curve. Okay, yeah, whatever, we'll figure it out. Obviously, no one in San Diego got sick. So when everyone was shut down, we were all, it was a beach party. It was awesome.
Yeah.
And then they closed our damn beaches, which, okay, it was nice for a bit. I'd still go to the beach, and then I'd literally see from like 300 yards away a cop would come up to me and be like, "Hey man, you need to social distance." I'm like, dude, I am the social distancing champion. There's so much
Yeah.
population density in that city. It's not as bad as like LA or New York, but there's
Yeah.
some population density in Southern California. I am literally on the beach by myself. I could not be more socially distanced. You're
Yeah.
the one who's not social distancing. And at that point, I realized like, okay, everyone's lost their mind. Everyone
Mhm.
has gone absolutely insane. I cannot deal with it. And then it's the first time I started having these realizations that maybe it's not me. Because again, I did everything right. I followed the prescription of how to be successful in the United States. And relative to other people my age, professional colleagues, peers, or just friends, guys I grew up with, I was doing really well, but I was still living paycheck to paycheck. And I was like, all right, this needs to change. And uh, again, prior to COVID, I was already starting to adapt that mentality. I grew up kind of a minimalist. I did no debt before I was 18 and did the student loans in my 20s, financed the cars and rented places that were out of my
Mhm.
budget. So I just went back to basics. I was like, you know what? I don't need a lot of money to live. If I really break down my budget, I live on $2,000 a month now in Mexico, and I live in the nicest neighborhood, and I live a very, very high quality of life. Now, there's some months where that'll go to like $4,000 or
Yeah.
$5,000. Like richest guys will call me up, hey, let's go to Miami to like a yacht show. Okay, I'm dropping 2G that weekend minimum. It's my entire monthly budget, but point being is that if you downsize your life and you really just focus on the basics of the core essentials you need to make you happy and put freedom first, then you have that extra kind of money to play around with. It also allows me freedom in my career. I'm in between contracts right now, so I'm doing more of the creative type stuff. But I checked this morning, thinking in my head, compared to my preconditioning, that oh my god, I'm spending all this money. My bank account balance must be it must be dwindling. Nope, it's exactly the same. It's been untouched. I
Yeah.
haven't taken on a corporate client or been on a corporate contract in a month and a half almost now. But I make some money at the YouTube game. I sell the private memberships. I have some digital products. My coaching stuff. I still do some very very small software as a service startup contracts on the side. I just sold a funnel yesterday. Sold a group membership yesterday. So I made $2,000
Nice.
yesterday. That's my
Good day.
entire month of expenses.
Yeah.
And again, that allows me the freedom to do what I want to do. I want to start recording more guitar stuff. I want to start traveling more here in Mexico. I want to have friends come down and visit me and collaborate with content together. So I set up my life in a very intentional and deliberate way to be able to do that. And to be honest, looking from the outside in, because sometimes you have to step outside of yourself and take
Yeah.
a look at your situation objectively, kind of stepping back into my body as if I was an observer for the last few years of my life. It's like, all right, this was a vision I had in my head, and even the layout of the apartment, the location, it's pretty close to how I had visualized it 2 or 3 years ago. At that point, you just have to be very clear, very intentional about what you want to do, be the architect of your own life, and then do the motions. Even there's days where I don't feel like it, or even walking to the gym hour 2 hours ago, I was thinking in my head, god, I really live a life quite like no one else. And to be honest, there's times it's kind of scary. Like there's no one that's forging a path that can show me how to do this stuff. I'm figuring it out for myself. But when guys call in or when guys DM me or my coaching clients, they talk to me, they break down their lives. And there's a lot of times people think these people, oh, they must be losers. They follow this kind of stuff. No, not at all. A lot of times these guys are exactly like me. They did everything right. On paper, they're shining stars. And then you get them behind the paywall or get them not public facing. They're like, hey man, like I should be happy. Objectively, I have everything that anyone could ever want, but I'm miserable. What's the deal? How do I start addressing these things? So I'm glad that you reached out, and we're doing some collaboration again. It's been a little bit, but it sounds like we're kind of both heading in the same direction, and I think that's the way the world's heading. I've been
Yeah.
saying that for years now. That's the way the world's going. And I don't know what the media is like in the US. I don't pay attention to it. But here in Mexico, someone said, a couple of girls sent me like a trending video today saying, hey, Mexico, prepare. You're going to have millions of gringo refugees coming down there because the US is going to have a civil war. Granted, there's their propagandist spend down here, just as the US, people fall into the propaganda. But that's kind of the word on the street here as far as the local Mexicans. Like, hey, the gringo migration is not going to stop. And I think it's kind of funny because for years and years, when Americans talked about that, they're like, "Oh, you guys are racist. You guys are assholes." I'm like, "Hey, what's up, guys? Like, you're pro open borders. Here I am. Although I am legal
Yeah.
down here. I am
Well,
legal.
well, I want to go back to something you said, and I
Yeah,
think this is an important thing is uh architecting your own life, because you mentioned that there's so many people out there that feel like they've done everything right, they've done the things they're supposed to, and then they're at a point in their life where they look around and they're unhappy, they're in debt, they don't have the relationships they want, they don't have the business, they don't have the lifestyle they want, and they're like, where did I go wrong? And I think part of it might be because the system that they just implicitly followed wasn't a system that was set up, if for them individually, nor was it one that was set up for them to succeed in the first place. So I think that's very important to consider how you can architect your own life. And it sounds like you've done a little bit of that, right? With your work structure, starting basically a side hustle that could evolve into something more, looking at your finances and trimming all the fat there so that you are only spending on the things that are necessary so that you can invest in people, relationships, events, and things like that that add more value. And then, of course, you're able to live in a location that, for most people, might be out of the box. But when you really look at it and really start, like you said, architecting your life, those things become a possibility. So if someone wants to do that, if someone wants to take a step and start creating that life that they want, what's a good first starting point?
All right, this is going to sound kind of weird, but the first thing that popped in my head, I remember I had a conversation with my younger sister years ago, and she's super Christian, she's super sweet, super feminine, has a conservative family, like the type of family that most American men want to have. She has. My brothers and I largely guided her in that direction and kind of put some pressure on her too. Like, to be honest, like, hey,
Yeah,
I'm not going to be a part of a loser family. So if you want to follow this path of like, being a not that my sister ever did this, but if you want to follow this path of being promiscuous and then going and focusing on your career and not forming a family, but she was never that way. She was always really Christian since she was
yeah,
younger. So she's like, hey, I want to have a conservative family. How do I do that? We're like, oh, my brothers are like, oh, thank God. Because we don't want to be from a loser family. But she told me one time when she started her career as a nurse, she was an ICU nurse for a while. So unfortunately, she dealt with a lot of death, and that's just the nature of the job. And at one point, she and I were talking, and she pulled me aside and she said, Jaren, have you ever thought about this? This is something I've been thinking of for a while. I was like, all right, go ahead, put it on me. And she said, well, a lot of people, when they come in and their last moments are there, and she spends a lot of time in people's last moments, she said, there's two types of people. There's people that are there, they're by themselves, there's no loved ones by their bed, their body's all withered out, they have a fear of look in their eyes, and then usually they communicate to her like some kind of regret, like,
mhm,
God, I wasted my life. I worked 35 years at the mill and then didn't even get my pension or my Rolex because they don't even really do that anymore. God, if I could go back, I'd give all my money away and just buy back my time or my youth. Or God, I wish I had the freedom, or anything along those lines. And these are things that people say now, no matter what age you're at. Like, oh, if only I had more time, only had this. Well, you're going to die someday. We're all going to die. It's the only guarantee in life: death and taxes. So you're
yeah,
gonna so visualize yourself in your last day of life. Do you want to be that guy that my sister said, hey, scared in a room by himself, just she and he or her, whatever, and essentially you're spending your last breath on this earth with a stranger who's your ICU nurse? Or she said, or there's the other type. There are people that come in, life well lived, family full of friends and loved ones. My family does this too. We handle death in a very different way. We celebrate life because we've had some tragedies in
yeah,
the family. So it's a party, it's festive, it's fun. And she said there's these types of people come in, all the loved ones are there. And she said there's this guy, like, super cool, is like an adrenaline junkie, like motorcycle guy, still skydive, like even in his like 80s, he was still doing crazy shit for an 80-year-old. And she's like, this guy looked at me, he's like, all right, I'm ready to go. She's like, Jaren, which one of those two examples do you want to be? And that really resonated with me. I was like, yeah, you know what? I'm nearing 30 at this point when we had this conversation. I'm 35 now. I'm just like, yeah, I'm already a third of the way through my life, and I'm not living it the way I want to. And again, I have the sports car, I have the high rise in California. At this time, I'm in shape, and I have everything on paper I should want, but that's just not working for me. And really, I started to sit on it and think about it more, kind of chew it up and spit it out eventually at some point. And I came to the realization that, well, I was happiest when I was studying abroad. I had a huge circle of friends. I got to travel whenever I wanted. It was so cheap to live here that I didn't really ever have to worry about money. Like I said, I checked my bank account earlier because the nature of your channel. Like, well, let's see, what am I doing? Just
yeah,
completely stable. Count hasn't gone up or down, and I'm not bringing in a ton of cash. It's just little things here and there from some of my creative endeavors.
yeah.
So I think those are leading indicators that I'm on the right path. But really, that conversation for me really kind of stuck. And then in my head, here's an activity. I've had a couple of my coaching clients do this when guys call in and say, hey, man, I was at the point where I was at the bottom of the bottle and contemplating taking the easy way out and passing that pain on to my family and loved ones instead, kind of the coward's way out. And
Yeah.
and I always tell them, well, in that sense, you hit rock bottom, so that's a good thing because you can't go any lower. Like
Yeah.
your life already sucks. You can't go any lower. But what you can
Well,
do
you
is you can
can,
start
but you don't
building.
want it to.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, once you get to that point where like, hey, man, like there's one in the chamber and it's going to be one and done. I'm going to end this pain and misery. That's always rock bottom because that option becomes better than what it is that you have to deal with in the physical world. So, and I've been in that situation too in my life. Part of my kind of journey, even before this conversation, I had my sister. I got into a fraudulent green card marriage. And I was like, ah, oh, damn it. Like, really? Because I really wanted that conservative American, I wanted the American dream, man. And a lot of people, especially in our generation, are realizing that it still exists to a degree, but that's not how most people are going to live lives. And the more and more you try to force it, it's not gonna happen. So on that topic, in terms of ending it all, like, okay, don't take yourself out of this physical world, but metaphorically, yeah, you have to end that person. So as part of that activity, I think, okay, well, let's say, like, obviously don't harm the physical self, but in a metaphorical sense, what do you want your tombstone to say? Or like, what do you want your obituary to read?
Yeah.
And those are things you need to start focusing on now because life happens like that. I swear to God, I wake up, I'm like, God, I'm 35. I still, in my head, I still have thoughts go through my head that's like, oh, I remember thinking this in kindergarten, or like, or it feels like 18 was just a few days ago. No, I'm going on a couple decades now.
Yeah.
Like, well, I've already had like multiple high school reunions. Okay, so things happen very quickly, and if you don't think in terms of, okay, I'm the architect of my universe, or rather than consume, I'm going to create, then your life's going to pass you on by, and you're going to be that guy on his deathbed, be like, God, you know what? I wish I could do it all over again. Well, you can't.
Yeah.
It's done. You had your chance. So that really resonated with me, that new way of thinking, that it's inevitable. Like I am not going to exist someday. So what am I doing now to really make a difference? Not even in the world at large. A lot of people get into like, they fall into like the isms. Oh, I'm part of this group, or I
Yeah.
advocate for these people. It's like, well, no, it's because you're a loser and you don't have shit going on in your life. That's the reason you're an ist or an ism. But
Yeah. You're
focus
not
on
creating your own
yourself.
reality. Yeah. You're not
Yeah,
creating your own
exactly.
reality. You're just adopting a new thing, an ideology, and you're supplementing that for your own ability to think and create on your own.
You're trading one system for another. So I think a
Mhm.
lot of these guys that find themselves, in my case, it was corporate America. You find yourself like when you're a student in college, oh, got to get an A, got to study, got to cram, got to do this. Oh, it's midterms. Well, these are all structures put in place by someone else. And like you said, they're not put in place to make you successful. They're put in place to make them successful. So my focus now is I'm going to put systems in place to make me successful. I remember when I was a kid, my parents used to tell me this, and I always hated it. Even as a 4 or 5 year old, I knew they were full of shit. They'd be like, Jaren, you realize the world doesn't revolve around you. I'm like, well, yeah, it does. From my perspective, looking out of my own two eyes, I can see in my physical environment that literally from my frame of reference, the world does revolve around me, and your world
Yeah.
revolves around you too. And if you don't accept that, if you don't understand that, then you're going to get sucked into someone else's reality. And then it's no wonder that you're completely miserable. The way I
Yeah.
think about it now, my world does revolve around me. People that come into my circle, that come into my reality, they're more than welcome. My door is wide open, but I have very, very strict boundaries and values and rules, and they're really not that strict. To be honest, it's like, just be a decent person. Don't be a liar.
Yeah.
Don't be a piece of shit. Don't steal from me. Don't cause drama. Like, just be a general positive
Those are
presence. And I'm
reasonable
pretty
things.
yeah, they're pretty reasonable, but we live in an unreasonable world now. So a lot of people, and I'm sure you get this too, like, oh man, you think you're so cool, you think you're so great, or no, like I think I just am. I think,
Yeah.
therefore I am. But you notice that I say I am, therefore I think. That's not the case. It's I think, therefore I am. And that's the problem. A
Mhm.
lot of people don't
They,
think.
they
They don't
say
realize they
the
can change
saying
their
the
own lives.
saying be do have, right?
Uh-huh.
It's the saying that people use a lot is like be do have. So if you want something, right, be it first, do the thing, the actions to create it, and then you'll have it. Right? Be do have. It's kind of like you're saying.
Well, yeah,
Think
exactly.
therefore I am. Right?
And I kind of think too, like people fall into like really, really weird ways of thinking and philosophies. Like, for example, if you think the US is like a fundamentally racist country, then guess what? It is. That is your reality. You will see it everywhere. If you walk around with that idea in your head and someone bumps into you in line or someone cuts you in line, or someone's just generally rude to you, like, oh, it's because, oh, it's just a racist society. Well, no, that a lot of people are assholes. Like, that's just a bad person. Or maybe they're not a bad person. Maybe they just got off the phone, had some crushing news, and like they don't have anyone else, or they don't have the type of life to where they can have a healthy outlet for these types of things. So they're going to take it on a complete stranger. But if you believe this premise that, like, and this is just an example, I don't take a position one way or another on this because I don't live in the US, I don't really care, that it's like a fundamentally racist society, then that is your reality. So you need to
Yep.
start reframing the way you interpret your reality and the way you show up in the world. And I remember a big thing for me too, I used to always think, oh, well, the world just kind of happens and I'm on the receiving end of it, especially like bad things happen. You get in an accident, you get injured, someone in your family gets sick, they die unexpectedly, you lose a job, you lose a girlfriend. Like, oh, this person did this thing to me. No, it doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
You commit actions in the world, and the world just kind of shines a mirror back onto you in terms of consequences or the way it responds, as far as whether you're doing the right thing or not. And it takes some trial and error to kind of get things locked in and start creating your own frameworks and your own systems. But a lot of people fall into that thinking, that victim mentality. Oh, this happened to me. Well, no, it didn't. Nothing happens to you that you don't allow. Even, let's say, here in Mexico, they're saying the US is going to get into a civil war. Let's say that does happen. Well, you kind of knew that. You kind of see it coming.
Yes.
There's leading indicators of that. When we got locked down in California for COVID in that month of March, it was like the second week of March in 2020. I knew that by the end of the summer, we would have racial riots. You just know these things. If you are a person that has two eyes and you connect them to your brain and you think for yourself, and then when you hear stupid stuff like the chatter all around you in your ear, it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, no, get out of here, because that is not reality. These are people that have been sucked into someone else's system. And I love the term useful idiots or sheep or followers or fools. They're all one and of the same. They're people that lack the ability to independently think for themselves. And they fall into these power structures. They fall into these narratives and they fall into these ways of thinking. And in the US, again, I had to get the hell out of there. There was no choice for me. These people are religious zealots in terms of like the vaccine type thing. It's funny in Mexico, because if you're educated, like, everyone here has fake papers, but like if you're educated, you know that was all bullshit. Like, you just know that. In the US, it's funny, like, oh, I'm really highly educated. I went to Harvard. I have friends and family with Harvard, Princeton, Stanford, Yale, you name it. And these people are idiots. Like, granted, they're good in their professional life because they have been programmed to fall into someone else's structure and be very highly effective and efficient economic units of output. But I don't want to
Yeah.
be that. I don't want to be an automaton. I don't want to be a robot. I don't want to be a cog in the system. I want to be the center point of my own universe. So it took a lot of, really, the first thing and foremost thing is that you have to start changing the stories you tell yourself and the way you're thinking. And it's really, really tough. I was telling
Yeah.
someone last night, we were having this conversation. It's like, what do you think about this? I'm like, okay, I'm gonna tell you right now, you're not gonna like the answer. I personally don't like the answer, but this is my observation. This is what the research indicates. And if you put this idea in the front of your head and just go around your world, your day-to-day life, and observe and see if this rings true to you. And she texted me earlier, she's like, oh my God, yeah. I'm like, yeah, you can't unsee it, right? But you
Yeah.
have to start being able to just be capable of doing these things. And a lot of people, to be honest, they'll never get there, nor they want to get there. Now, if you are watching channels like Dylan's or mine, then hopefully you at least, you might not know what that looks like, but you're at least curious enough to, like, okay, how do I become receptive to this new way of thinking or these new ideas?
Yeah.
Or another one is, how do I start rejecting things that don't serve me? That's also a very difficult thing for people to do also.
Yeah, exactly. You have to start questioning things. When you talk about walking around and viewing the world, I always like to think of it as, everyone views the world through the lenses of their own value system, right? So whatever you value, that's what you start seeing on the world, right? Because that's what you train your mind to look for. I guess the scientific thing, I think, is the reticular activating system. So a real quick example is if, like, you're shopping for a new car,
Yeah,
right?
that's what I was
Obviously
thinking.
one that you don't finance with your total yearly salary, like we mentioned before. But you're shopping for a new car, and then all of a sudden you start seeing that same type of car everywhere because you've just trained your brain to value that specific type of thing, and so it notices that in the world where before it didn't, because most of the information in the world, your mind and body just doesn't. It sees it but doesn't really pay attention to it because it would take too much energy. So what does it pay attention to? Well, it pays attention to the things that are fundamentally valuable to it. So some, very fundamental things it pays attention to, right? If something's going to kill you, right? If something's food, right? If something's a
Yeah.
mate, right? Those kind of reptile brain things. But then the higher order things are all things that you can train and program. And too often, I find that people don't question that, question what they're training or have been trained to see. And once they start coming across content like this and channels like this, and start asking those questions, now, they may not come to the same conclusions, but at least they're going through the process of coming to their own conclusions, which
Mhm.
before they weren't. And when they do that, they can go back to architecting their own reality. And like you mentioned, becoming the center of their own universe.
Yeah, and again, that's really difficult for a lot of people to do because really, here's a good activity I do. I do it every morning. I wake up early. I'll hit snooze like twice, but it's not because I'm lazy and I want to go back to bed. It's because I'm still in that half sleep, half awake phase.
Hmm.
So I can really focus on things. And in my head, usually before it took a long time, but now it's just kind of automatic because I trust myself. I trust my intuition. Like my brain just serves up information to me. I'm like, yep, we're going to do X, Y, Z. And then here's the plan for the day. But schedule's a big one. I like visualization a lot. So I will walk myself through my day, even any unforeseen things that might come up. A big one is a couple weeks ago, we had a big earthquake here in Mexico City. So I wake up and I've got a bag ready to go and it's got money in it and it's got passport. I was a minimalist before I got this apartment. So I still have my minimalist living out of my suitcase. That is all in a corner ready to go. Because if this building starts shaking, I think it's going to fall over. I sling it over my shoulder, put on my boots, I'm out of here. And
Yeah.
if the whole city crumbles, I can get the hell out of here. Like, well, now realistically, that's probably not going to happen. That was a couple of weeks ago, but the day after a giant earthquake, you're like, you know what? I need to be ready for this. A
Hmm.
lot of people don't do these daily type audits. I do a morning audit, and I call it like an all systems check. Just go through. Um, it was kind of cold today, so my nose is a little stuffed up. My throat, like I don't have any swollen glands or anything, but like, okay, well, I've got some vitamin C here for days like that. It was really hot yesterday. I don't get sick when it gets cold. I get sick when it's really hot and then it's really cold. It's that temperature difference that screws me up. So just one of many things on my daily systems analysis that I go through in my head as far as like, okay, you know what, Jaren, what does the world look like today? What does your day look like? How are we going to show up in the world? What are we going to do? What are the things that have to be done? Is there like an outstanding payment? Did I get some kind of email of something that's going to piss me off if I don't take care of it and that's going to linger on me for multiple days? Well, I don't want to put that off. I'll take care of that first and foremost, get some momentum in the day. But have these conversations with yourself and start mentally creating these maps of what your day looks like. And when you get in the habit, and just start day by day, and then once you do that and then you start getting your systems in place, the big thing is just eliminate bullshit. So the less bullshit you have on the front of your mind. Good example was when I lived in California, when I was starting to do the like kind of minimalist mindset shift, was that I had multiple cars at one point. Well, parking's a big thing in California. Like, all right, I'm spending $400 a month to park my Porsche and my truck. My truck was paid off, but I'm just paying money for it to sit there. What a waste. And not only that, it's like, okay, well, it's an older truck. So is it going to crank when I need it? It's like an emergency type thing, or if we're going to the mountains or off road or something like that. And then, oh, does it need an oil change? Oh, well, the windshield wiper's cracking. And like, this is just one object. This is my second car, but I'm carrying around in my head. Oh, what's the maintenance schedule look like? Oh, is it going to get broken into? Oh, what's the street sweeping schedule? It's Tuesday and Thursday, but I always forget what side of the street. And I was like, I don't want to allocate that mental energy to something that literally just sits there. It's sucking
Yeah.
out time, energy. It's causing me just a little bit of stress, but that's just one thing. Now, other thing, oh, do I have unpaid medical bills? That's just a little more stress, a little more time and energy. So get rid of all that stuff. Just knock it out. It's going to be painful. Like I like the analogy, pull the band-aid off fast, just get it done. And then you're at a point you're like, wow, I don't really have anything to worry about. And that frees up a lot of your mental bandwidth to focus it in other channels to really, I use analogy that you're the architect of your universe, but really you're the own creator of your universe, because once you have all of that energy just laser beam focused into the next thing, and you're not worrying about car payments or medical bills or what happens if this, or how do I afford my rent, or oh, the economy's collapsing, or oh my god, what am I going to do, whatever thing you have in your head. And then again, a lot of people replace what would be more traditional religion with the isms, like, oh my god, I have to go out and protest for this underrepresented group. Like, well, no, you don't really care
Yeah.
about them, because if you did, you'd give them all of your money. Like, you'd be like Jesus and just give all your shit to the poor,
Yeah.
or
Or even work with them.
you'd let them live in your house free. Oh, people like in California, oh, the tenant rights. I'm like, well, you're charging $1,000 a month rent for just like a tiny ass bedroom. Like, you don't really believe in helping poor people, because you would have 8 poor people living in your spare bedroom, but you don't.
No.
You rent it out just like everyone else does. So shut the fuck up. Um, And really, and you notice when I say these things, there's emotional energy behind it, because these are stupid ways of thinking. They're frameworks, they're thought patterns that don't serve anyone at all. And they're put in place by people to serve them and their agenda. So
Yeah.
I think that's my biggest advice. Think for yourself, and then stop thinking how other people think. Now, if it's objectively true, put it in your head, run it around, experience your own world, and see, okay, this is true or not. And a lot of times there's nuance. Going back to the example, like, oh, the US is like a racist country. Well, yeah, historically it was. And I'm not ignorant enough to think that there's not generational byproducts or effects that resonate throughout time, but to focus on that, to make that like your highest power, and in terms of where historically God used to be there, something above yourself, your highest power. Now your highest power is an ist or ism, or whatever outrage pill you want to swallow for that day. And then in the same breath, you come to me, well, Jaren, why do you live such a good life? You must have gotten lucky. You're like, okay, yeah. Like there's a lot to unravel there. And this is how most people think, which I have to constantly remind myself. Most people do not think like me, or like you, or other guys that are kind of adjacent to these topics we cover. But it's fascinating to say the least.
Well, it's like the simple, it's the Jordan Peterson advice: just clean your room.
Yep.
And we've talked about that in various forms of taking account of what's going on, and you get rid of things you haven't used so that you don't have to worry about them, so you can focus on things that matter and are more important, or you could better come up with those things. And too often people they look around the room, and my place is messy, I got to clean my room, and it's something that you don't just do once, you got to continuously do it. But too often they're like, I don't want to organize my closet, so they put everything in there, close the door, and then like, now I'm gonna go out in the world and try to fix everything. It's like, whoa. Well, maybe organize your closet first. Maybe organize your own life. Take account of those things, question those things, and then you can really determine if you going out in the world is really what you want, right? Because you've taken account of the things, and you've actually had those dialogues and conversations with yourself. So I think it's very important.
That's a good point too. I like that term. Put yourself out there in the world and go out in the world. Because I used to never understand what this really means. I grew up, I mean, I was social. I had friends and all that stuff, but I'm kind of an introvert by nature. A lot of people don't realize that. I'm usually pretty high energy. I'm working on bringing it down. But to be honest, I've kind of already, my first year on my channel, I've kind of already said everything I think. Now it's just in terms of putting these ideas out there, kind of volleying them back and forth and trying to dial stuff in. So in this sense, and I have a high-rise view. It's kind of sunny outside, the shades down, but I have a high-rise view. I like waking up every morning and looking over one of the world's most populous cities and being like, you literally feel like, okay, I am looking down on the world. It does something to you. And I remind myself, I am out in the world. I am not in the town I grew up in. I'm not in high school. I'm not in my mom's basement, sitting there watching TV, getting pissed off. Whatever side of the political aisle you fall on, they're the same people. Your extreme right-wing person is the same person as your extreme left-wing person. Like they're the same personality, they're the same whatever. They just download a different belief system. And they go out there like they're these little foot soldiers, like, well, I'm going to execute the will of someone else. Like, bro, you're not doing anything. You're just sitting there. You're just mentally masturbating. I wake up and I look over this beautiful city, and then I look at my schedule, and it's exactly what I want to do. Like my days are structured with activities that I like doing. Okay, I woke up and I spent 20 minutes. I like to start my day at the house tidy. Got a little sloppy last night. We had a really cool lightning storm, so I had some company over, and it's like, hey, like, what are we gonna do? It's like, we're just gonna watch the lightning storm. And people down here are so cool. They're like, oh, that sounds awesome. Yeah, of course. Now, try that in the US. They're like, hey, baby, come over. Let's watch a lightning storm. She'll be like, are you high? Like, I want to get high, or I want to go out and get drunk, or I want to get messed up, or I want to be seen by other people. And here, like, oh, hell yeah, let's watch a lightning storm. So tidied up the house a bit today, and then just started going about my day, and it's structured and planned exactly how I want to be. And really, if you're not sure if you're getting what you want out of life, take a look at your schedule. Do you even have a schedule? Are you allocating time, energy, and resources to the things you want to do? A big thing for me when I was a kid, I I always had a knack for music, but I never really developed it because there are other competing priorities or other things that I deemed, or not me, but people around me in my environment deemed were more important. It was mainly academia and athletics in my family. Not saying that's a bad thing. You need to be a well-balanced person, but the music thing was never really a big push. Well, now that I'm a free thinking, independent adult and I have nothing holding me back, that's something I build into my schedule. An hour a day, I play guitar. I've been doing it for a year, and I'm getting to the point where I can start releasing videos and people are asking me to come record with them.
Nice.
Why? Like, it's not saying that, oh my God, I'm some savant musician. It's because I made a very clear focus on it, that this is important to me. This is something I'm going to do every single day for a year. Try that. See where it gets you. And again, going back to eliminating bullshit from your life, look at your schedule.
Mhm.
Start tracking it. Or it's like, Dylan, I know you're in good shape too, but when it comes like the diet stuff, a lot of people, hey, I don't know what to eat. Like, well, you don't even know what you're currently eating. So how are we going to create a baseline upon which to measure the results?
Yeah.
You don't even have a constant variable in that aspect of your life. How are we going to start throwing new things in to see what works or not? Like, you got to start somewhere. So,
Yep.
so that's a good point too. Going back to how you structure your life, like how structured is your life, and be honest with yourself. And yeah, it sucks. Like it's funny because one thing I never realized before, when I said, okay, I'm going to dedicate my life to being free and living for me first and helping out those around me who have shared and aligned goals, values, missions, all that good stuff. But really, what is it I want to do first? Or what is it that I'm currently doing that I need to not be doing anymore? And then how do we track that? How do we
Yeah.
measure that? And I laugh when I say it, because to be free, you have to be disciplined, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, it does. That structure can set you free. When because you can depend on it, you can rely on it, and you're not just
Yep.
in chaos. Because it's so easy if you don't have any sort of structure. Like I said, if you don't have a schedule, if you don't have, you don't have things to measure, that you can be swayed, you can be pulled from one thing to another thing, from this emotion to that emotion.
Mhm.
And then that just dips you into chaos, and then you don't know which way's up, which way's left, which way's right. So creating that discipline definitely helps. I mean, that's what helped me over the past few months. I did the 75 hard challenge, and so it just forces you to create a structure, right? And like, you can say you value something or believe in something, but until you actually start doing the actions to demonstrate that you value that, it means nothing.
Mhm.
I like to say, words are wind and actions are everything. Because you can say you like something, you can say you value something, but unless you're doing the things to back up that value and belief, it doesn't matter. But definitely, like, I felt more free and more capable by having that structure. And it wasn't even a structure that I chose to. I didn't create it myself, but I chose to adopt one for that time, and it worked out really well. Um, but I want to move on to one more to another thing. Is you mentioned that you have a mentor, and that you have a group as well. I want you to talk a little bit more about that and the importance of finding mentors and finding like-minded people to interact with and to engage with that on your journey to being the architect of your own life.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, going back, I remember in my early 20s, as I was early in my career coming out of college, I grew up single parent household. Didn't have my dad around from like 8 onwards. I'd see him like once or twice a year, but not like day to day, really being that model and showing me in person how to actually be a man and show up in the world and conquer the world. I had to figure that all out all on myself. And I'm the oldest of, there's 4 of us in general. So I kind of took on the responsibility of being that person for my siblings. But going into the corporate world, I realized very quickly that I was very good at school. I always got straight A's, graduated magna cum laude. I've got 3 different degrees, 2 undergrads and a master's. Always top my class. Even as a little guy, I was always really good at school. And so I thought, okay, that'll just carry over in the corporate world. I got kind of lucky in the sense that my freshman year in college, I got an internship for a very large defense contractor, walked out of school right when the economic collapse was happening, with a full-time job, making more than most of my friends' parents' combined income. So like, hell yeah, I'm starting life on the right foot. And then the further you start going down that path, you realize there's little things that come up, like, well, how do I negotiate a salary? How long do I stay here? I'm not really fulfilled with this work. How do I pivot over here? Like, can I jump ship? Can I get another job in the company? Like, how do I have these conversations? How do I act on day one in the job? No one teaches you this stuff. You have to figure it out for yourself. So in my early 20s, I always thought that, okay, well, Jaren, just work really, really hard, and then someone will just see you and they'll say, hey, son, come under my wing and I'll mentor you. And I just kind of held out on that hope. Just all right, just keep doing the right thing, and someone will recognize it. No, that doesn't happen that way. You have to get out in front of people's face, just like you're doing, I'm doing. Like, hey, here's what I'm doing. I'm living in Mexico and I'm fucking crushing life. If you want to learn how to do that, get into my private community, and we will show you exactly the steps to take to do that. That's
Yeah.
how you have to do it. But if you're just, but in my head, it's kind of like when people move to Hollywood. If you've ever lived in LA, I lived there for a little bit, and I go
Yep.
to San Diego a lot, and I've got buddies in LA. It's like
Yeah.
we'll
I
go
was there
do,
for a year.
yeah. So we'll go do fun stuff in LA, and you meet the same people, the same stories. They just seem like, oh, well, I was the hot guy or the hot girl in high school, so I'm gonna go out to LA and get discovered. Like, discovered for what? You're not doing anything. What are you gonna get discovered for? You got to put yourself in front of people's faces and be like, hey, I'm here, like the ADHD kid inside of me. And I don't know if you have a bit of that too. A lot of people with the
Yeah.
entrepreneurial mindsets kind of do. It's like, hey, fucking look at me. Here's what I'm doing. Do you want to be a part of it? I'll show you how. You got to do that. And so for the mentorship thing, during my more conservative kind of doing everything right corporate career that I was going more and more down that path, I was just hoping, just close my eyes and cross my fingers and hoping and praying, and like someone's gonna see that I'm a diamond in the rough, and they're gonna pull me out and put me on a path to polish me. Like, no, you got to do all that yourself.
Yeah.
And that really rang true to me when I started nearing the age of 30. Not only had I not found a mentor in like 10 years of really wanting a mentor, younger guys started asking me to be their mentor. I'm like, okay, well, now I need someone ahead of me in life. It's kind of like the past, present, future. Here I am right now. Here's where I'm going. It's a very clearly defined vision, but I need someone to uncover my blind spots for me and show me, hey, Jaren, here's an easier way to get from point A to point B, simultaneously while I'm doing that for younger guys that are caught up in problems I was caught up in the past, where I can shed some light on how to avoid them or how to get through these sometimes very tangled up things that they've created in their lives. So for me, the
Yeah.
big thing was, okay, I need to start putting myself out there. I didn't openly raise my hand and say, I need a mentor, but really, we live in the greatest communication revolution in humankind. A lot
Yeah.
of forces are using it for evil, but you can still, even at a small level, use it for good. So for me, I was on the radio in high school, and I would get people ask, what's your purpose? What's your passion? There's never any clear answer. It's usually, well, what are the things you get lost in? What are the things you can do for free and not get paid for? This, because you have to do it for free and
Yeah.
not get paid for it for a while. But it's so easy. For example, I go home to visit my family, and God bless them. I realize that they're very good people, but we're very different. So I
Mhm.
go around them. I love learning about what my brothers are doing, what my siblings are doing. Like, everyone in my family's an ass kicker. I'm very fortunate that I was dealt that hand in life, that everyone's a fucking champion in my family, but we're different. So I can have these conversations like Christmas time basement drinking Bud Light type conversations, but my brothers aren't going to like jump on board and grab their shit and move to Mexico, because they have their own lives. They have their
Yeah.
own way of thinking that's going to make them happy in life. But for me, I can get on YouTube. I can say, hey, I'm a guy. I built an inbound online dating funnel because that's what I do for a living in my corporate life, and I'm very good at it. So I did that. I applied the same methodology to online dating, and it just works. Or I learned Spanish very quickly using my own method. I had
Mhm.
learned instruments before as a kid, so I used a method like how you would use music, or how you would learn music to learn language. Guess what?
Mhm.
That's a lot more efficient and quicker way to learn a language. So I just raise my hand and say, hey guys, here's some really cool stuff that I do really well. Didn't realize it at the time, but I am very nerdy. I am very academic. I write everything down. I track everything. So let me just share with you kind of my experience, how it is I came to this conclusion. And if I could go back, how I'd even refine the process further. And then drop me a DM, drop me a line, join my community if you want to learn more about this stuff. But I'm just putting myself out there. And then people found me. So
Yeah.
I had people, I liked Rich Cooper a lot, because a lot of times when it comes to like the minute details, I'm so academic, I already know these things, but I don't have that voice of wisdom, or I didn't, in my ear saying, hey, don't worry about all that shit.
Mhm.
Just focus on this for now. Okay, now you've done this. Here's what you do next. And one thing, I'll show some love to Rich. One thing I always say, especially in these types of spaces, everyone tells you how to avoid pain.
Mhm.
The key to, what does Tony Robbins say? It's the core motivational factor of people. It's either to avoid pain or to seek pleasure. Most
Yeah.
people are in the pain avoidant type
Yep.
category. And a lot of the content creators in this space say, okay, well, here's how you avoid the pain. or here's how you avoid failure, here's what you do instead. But nobody really prepares you for what happens when you start succeeding at these areas in your life. So I really liked Rich Cooper for that. He's like, hey, you're at this point, here are the considerations you need to take into place. Don't worry about that. Once you have this level of income, once you hit this milestone, then these are considerations taking place. But for now, here's where you start, here's your next goal set. And he's very structured in his way of thinking, and he doesn't have to say a lot of words. Because again, I've read plenty of books, I've listened to plenty of podcasts, I know all this stuff intellectually, academically, but like, how do you put it into practice?
Yeah.
So he was really good at that. I signed up for his top 10% group. It's for people, he says, the general rule that make over 100K a year. I believe now at time of posting or publishing or recording, it's $3,997 a year. That's an annual type fee, so it's a bit of cash to pony up. And for me, it wasn't. For me, it's like, okay, I want to meet other guys that are kind of wired like me, because I'm getting tired of really with the online dating apps, it's kind of harder to meet other dudes than it is to meet girls. And there's
Well,
movies like that. Like I Love You, man.
especially like high quality people. And like, I don't say this as like a mean thing, but this is something I noticed is when I started doing the 75 hard. Are you familiar with that challenge? Do you know what
No,
that
I'm
is?
not actually. I've
Okay,
heard of
so,
it, but I'm
so just
not
for
familiar
listeners,
with
yeah, yeah.
the
So
details.
basically, it's by a guy named I think Andy Frizella. He's out of St. Louis. I'm from St. Louis, but I think he started First Form, and they were like a nutrition supplement, sports, whatever, fitness company now that have grown in the internet age. But anyways, he started this challenge where 75 days, and you have to do 2 workouts a day, 45-minute workouts. They can't be combined, so they got to be separated. One has to be outside. You got to drink a gallon of water a day. You can't do alcohol, no drugs. You got to stick to a diet, and you got to read 10 pages of a nonfiction book a day. And you have to complete every task for 75 days. And if you fail, you have to start over. So it sounds like hard in the beginning, but when you really do it and break it down day by day, you're like, wait, that's actually not that hard, right? It's not that hard to schedule this out. I have to prioritize these things. What other things in my life, like you talked about, are my actions saying I prioritize that I don't need to be prioritizing, like, eating fast food or going out to eat at restaurants all the time, or sitting and just watching TV for 3 hours at night when I'm tired, instead of like stretching or going on a walk or hitting the gym. So it's pretty easy to carve out the time to do those things, but you just have to actually do it. And what I noticed was when I told people that I was doing it, I would get two basic reactions, right? And one reaction happened a lot less than I would have liked. So the first reaction, and the most common reaction, is when you tell someone, they're like, "Oh man, that sounds hard. Good on you, but I could never." And they just start coming up with excuses
Yep.
immediately, right,
They
on why
speak it
they
into
can't
their
do that.
existence because they can't
Yeah,
do it. Yeah.
exactly. But they can. They just don't believe it, and they're
Mhm.
so intertwined with these bad habits, right? When you think about the things that they're really advocating for, it's like, wait, so I want to continue not eating healthy and not tracking my progress with that, or not being
Yep.
disciplined with that. I want to continue not working out. I want to continue drinking alcohol as much as I want, like continue being dependent on these substances that, it's fine in moderation, but like, do you really want to go to bat for, for those things? Like, do you really want to draw the line in the sand for those things? Like, I stand here, I won't ever give these things up that are clearly bad for me. So that was like the majority of people. And very, very, very few people. I had like one person was like, that sounds awesome. I'm in. How do we do it? Right. And I realized that I want and need, and if you want to improve, like when you look around in your environment, they say you're the sum of the 5 people you spend the time with,
That's
and the
so
most time
true.
with. And if your people, if you do something like this and the people around you aren't immediate, like, how do I sign up? You might be with the wrong people. And you might need to start finding people that are like, hell yeah, I wasn't planning on doing this, but now that you're doing it, I can't let you get ahead. So yeah, I'm in. Right. And so I realized that. And so I think that's so important, that what you're doing and bringing those people together, because I think people need that. I think we're more isolated, even though we're connected, we're more isolated in our local lives than ever before.
Mhm.
And there's so many distractions. And it's easy to fall victim or prey to distractions that can be destructive rather than constructive for your life.
Yeah, so that was kind of the commitment I made in terms of, well, I need to start putting myself out there, because how are you going to be discovered? How are you going to be seen if you're not going through the motions, but actually doing them, actually committing to it? So at that point, it came to, I'd already mentally kind of unplugged from mainstream society and fallen into systems that were put in place for other people to succeed and for me not to. Um, so you kind of have this coming with Jesus type talk with yourself. It's like, okay, well, where do I start? What do I do? And then with my internal audit systems, like, well, Jaren, what are things you're really, really good at? Like, I speak Spanish really well for an American. A lot of times I'll have people show up and they'll be like, dude, wait, where are you from? Like, oh, I'm a gringo. Like, what? No way. Like, they know I'm not from Mexico, but they can't really tell from my accent where I'm from, and my grammar's really good. So it's like, oh my God, like, well, I would have never thought you're American. And you'll hear them start talking shit. I'm like, bro, I'm a gringo. And they're like, oh, sorry. So I'm really good at that. Or again, people notice, because I sometimes you don't notice, like, you're your own harshest critic. You don't realize the things you're good at. So start keeping your ear open for what other people are telling you. Hey man, you're really good at this stuff. Like, you figure this stuff out. For me, like, yeah, it was a pain in the ass to move all the furniture in here and stuff, but a lot of people don't know how to just pack their bags and go to Mexico and get an apartment and just set up a life abroad. I've done it multiple times already. So for me, it's like, I already kind of knew what to do. So it was really that internal audit process. Like, all right, what kind of value can I add? Just where can I show up? So I signed up for Rich's Top 1% community. The main objective was that I need to meet some solid dudes. I need to meet some guys that are ahead of me in life that I can aspire to be like in other areas of my life. We mentioned on the pre-call, we both kind of adhere to this like 7 core pillar type philosophy, that there's verticals in your life where you're leaps and bounds ahead of other people, and other verticals where not so much. So I just wanted to get into the right room, didn't know where. To be honest, even there's a summer in San Diego, I got on like the Bumble Friends or whatever. Like, I was like, I called it Bumble Bro. Like, all right, cool, I'll meet some buff guys or like that are into financial independence and just personal freedom in general. And they like the Latin chicks, and we can go down to Tijuana, and I'll show them around there. And no, most of the guys are, there's something off with them. They're just your normal mainstream everyday people. So I'm like, all right, I need a room of people that is highly vetted, and to where there's a vacuum to where I can actually be 100% myself, and then figure that stuff out and start putting out to the world. So I joined Rich's Top 1% community, and I was a fly on the wall in there for a while, for about the first year or so. And then I noticed people started asking about like the girl type things. And they were very basic questions like, should I wait 2 days to text a girl back then I match on a dating app? Like, no, dude, she just messaged you just now. She's bored at home. And if you message her, she's going to get it. And then you can take it offline and set the plans. And it's like things that are very, very basic, because I have the system down already. And I've gotten it to the point to where for very little effort, I get very big results. Like, all right, so I just started breaking this stuff down for people at a very, very high level. Not high level like 30,000 foot view, but like, really, these are the reasons why. This is why I tested this. These are the results I got. Here are some considerations to take if you find yourself in XYZ situations, and take it. And treat it like open source. Like, don't criticize me direct and say, oh, you're an idiot because you think this. Like, well, no, I gave you a very, very defined framework. Now test it and take it and make it work to you. And if it doesn't work for you at all, that's great. It's not going to work for everyone. Throw it out. But this is what I'm putting out there. And then very quickly, I started rising as kind of one of the, I wouldn't say leader in terms of like kicking ass in my analog life, but within that digital group, that one of the guys that, the top commenters, posters, whatever on the forum, a guy that people engage with a lot. And then at one point, Rich, add a handful of us into a private group. He's like, hey guys, I'm not the end all be all. I'm not the omnipotent person that has all the answers for all this stuff, but you guys have taken a lot of this information or these recurring themes that I espouse on my channel and applied them in different ways to your lifestyle. I'd like to expand my reach a bit. Come on and let's do a panel show, and then you can address these things. And I was like, oh great, that's fantastic. So to be honest, my first time on the show, I was like kind of stargazing. I was like, oh my God, I'm in front of this huge audience, and I got just blown up in the comments, rightfully so. But at that point,
what'd you do? What was you just weren't on point with what you were saying, and the audience was.
No, I was on point, but I was on point, but there were things that I had figured out a long time ago. So like more of like the red pill type topics, like online dating stuff, like how to get girls or whatever. This is stuff that I figured out in college, and then I kind of applied an academic lens to it when I got into like these types of circles, because okay, something I already know. How do I break this down for people to achieve the same results, but in bite-sized chunks, one step at a time? So I came on, and I think the topic was how to fill your schedule of dates. So, well, I have a whole system on how to do that. So I brought the same way I did in the 1% forums behind the paywall. I came into a live audience like, hey guys, here's what you do. It's not as hard as you think. Here's how you think. Here's how you structure this. Here are the three main steps, and I got really granular with it. And people just like, oh, that guy's know what he's talking about. Oh, he's full of shit, or oh yeah, he's making it up. I'm like, how do you make that up? Like, it's really, really
Like, I
complex.
got a
I mean,
system. I've written it down. I
yeah,
got it on a piece of
exactly.
paper if you want to see.
Like, yeah, Ranger. Well, it's gonna turn into a premium product here at some point, because even on my channel, I get tired of people like, yeah, whatever, dude. Like, come down and visit. It's like a $50 flight from Tijuana. If you're in Southern California, come down. I got a spare bedroom. We will go out and you will see this stuff in action. It just is. It's not me trying to sell myself, or I'm not married to my own ideas. Again, a lot of things that I think are things that I wouldn't have necessarily agreed with in the get go, or things that I necessarily like, but they work. So I'm the type of guy, I'm a pragmatist. I like doing things that work, things where I can put in minimal effort and get maximum output. And I don't care if other people like it or not, but you find yourself in a situation with a problem that I used to have, and now I don't have that problem. So shut up and listen. Here's what we do. Um,
Yeah.
and I realized really early, once I started participating more in those private type forums, then getting more in front of the public, and putting my ideas out there and having them challenged, and then having people say, hey, have you ever tried this? I've had people say, hey, you're on the right path, but actually I had that same issue, Jaren. Here's what I tried, try this instead. And I will gladly throw out an aspect or a component of my own system if something else can replace it that works better. I'll be the first person to take my idea out to pasture and, put it down. But I started doing more and more of that, and then I didn't realize at the time, but on Rich's channel, like for a lot of content creators, the value that I added was, because I thought in my head like, oh, this guy's really successful, he's got this huge audience. What value do I add? He's like, dude, you're putting a unique spin on some of these things that I put out there, but also when people blow you up in the comments, that's entertaining. So we can take these and cut them into clips. And so from his end, he got more reach, got more new whatever. I got more Instagram followers. I got to test my ideas in real time and kind of refine them. And then the group started doing meetups. I don't think I've missed. There's a lot of side meetups or regional meetups, but like an officially sanctioned meetup where like the kind of the leaders of the group get together. We do them on average about once every quarter. Even the first two, I didn't really have any money, but I just made it happen. I just figured that was something that was important to me. I'm like, okay, well, there's guys here that brought in $100 million last year. I'm pretty sure there's a handful of guys in the group that are actual legit billionaires. We have politicians. We have people from foreign intelligence agencies. We have interesting people in there. And for a mind like mine to be in that environment, behind a paywall, behind closed doors, to where I can really flesh out some of these more complex thoughts, and then make these little adjustments, these nits and these tweaks in my own life, and then just see the results in real time. Because a lot of times you're 99% of the way there. There's just one little component of your mental infrastructure that's broken, that's just not leading you to the results you want. You just have to take that one piece out, take that one fuse and replace it with something better. And then you're like, boom, okay, I have this thing down. It's not an issue for me anymore. So that was a room I wanted to be in. Started going to the events, taking more of type of leadership role in the group. And then early this year, Rich reached out and he's like, hey, you know what? The group, it's a pretty high price point. There's a lot of guys, they want to get in there, but they can't. It's like, let's do this. Let's open a lower tier, do like a one-time lifetime fee. And then once they get to the point, once they get to like whatever the metrics are, we call it the top 10% group. So whatever the metrics are to be a top 10% man, once you get there or you get near the top 1% group from like an objective standpoint, then we'll go ahead and bring you in there. So it's kind of a feeder thing. Also kind of get my feet wet and running private groups and whatnot. But it's nice because I'm not a guy who makes multi-millions of dollars a year yet. I'm on my way. I've multiple X factored my income year over year for the last couple of years. When I started off as a minimalist, I was making like no money. I'm like, oh my God, I need no money to live. That is really liberating. You're like, I don't have to make money to be happy.
Yeah.
But you get to the point like, you know what, like I'm happy, but I want influence. I want reach. I want power. I want to be able to like put these ideas and these plans I have in place at a massive level. How do I do that? Well, now I need to start associating other people. I need to start making alliances. I need to start forming a tribe. So that was the thing before. You'd hear it, but it didn't really make sense to you. And then I got to the point like, okay, there's only so much I can do as myself. I can become as efficient and streamlined in all my day-to-day workflows as much as I want and kick ass on every front in things that are important in my own personal private world. But if I want to change the world out there that I'm looking over, I need to start making alliances, and I need to start a big thing in my head is I need to start playing the game. So it was about that time Rich like, hey, let's launch this top 10% group and start developing these young guys that maybe aren't at the stage you are yet. And then once they get there, then you're expanding your reach, or expanding your system. And I've got a handful of guys even here in Mexico City. I'm going to meet up with them this week, and some opportunities, some economic opportunities came up on this on the state side. Well, that they
Mhm.
don't have the legal status to, like, they can't just go to the U.S. and partake in this opportunity. But I'm legal in both countries. Like, hey, I can figure out how to put myself in the middle and maybe try to help everyone out. So like, it's already paying dividends. I re- I I received benefit once I started participating in that top 1% group. But really, once you launch your own group and you're like, okay, well now, like, there's people that actually need help. Like
Yeah, there are.
like
They are.
it's one thing to say this stuff online, and then these people dropping your DMs like, dude, I literally had a pistol in my mouth and I heard something you said. I'm just like, oh my god, like, I gotta take this seriously.
Yeah.
Like I'm in a position to where I can change the physical world, and that is something that I want to pursue even more. But again, how do I do this? So in terms of the group, if you are a type of guy, well, I say looking to level up on all areas of love and life by building lives worth living and loving. It's that top 10% group. DM me on Instagram. I'll give all my
Yeah.
information here when we sign
Yeah.
off.
What are your
But
channels? Yeah, we're getting close to wrapping it up. So,
oh, cool. Yep.
yeah, so I think this is a good point. So, yeah, what are those channels? How can you get in touch with you? Because I think it is so important. Just to recap some of the things we talked about architecting your own life. Creating refining the values of which you view the world in, so you make sure that they are consistent and congruent with who you are and who you want to be. We talked about just kind of minimizing all the stuff that you have to do in your life, and then also joining groups, finding mentors, finding like-minded people so you can grow. And I think you hit on this point really well, that you have to start participating, you have to start showing up and doing things. And once you do that, right, you may not get results overnight, but over time, if you're consistent and you consistently show up and you're passionate about something, you will start to get noticed. People will start asking you questions, and that is the launch pad to the next step, to the next thing, to where you can start building your own thing, where you can create your network, where you can have that influence and you can make an impact on the world versus just being a spectator. So we covered a lot, and you're
We
doing a
did.
lot,
Yeah.
Jaren. You're building a lot.
We tend to do that when you and I speak.
Yeah, which is great, which I love it. So where can people go to find you, find your content, find your programs, and the next steps there?
Yeah, the easiest way to get in touch with me is Instagram at Jaren Scott. That is my real name. I have a rule for myself that if I can't put my real name in front of something I say, it's not worth being said yet. Doesn't mean it's wrong, just means I haven't really thought through it yet. I haven't tested the idea. So Jaren Scott, JarenScott for any audio only listeners. Again, that's JarenScott on Instagram. I use that as my day-to-day messenger. Just get in there, follow me, drop me a DM. If you want to get in that top 10% group, it's at time of posting this, it's a $9.97 lifetime membership fee. It gives you 20% discount on myself, my buddy Moff, Rich Cooper, and another admin by the name of Renegade Wingman on our coaching services, any premium type services. If you ever do want to upgrade to the top 10%, that initial fee for top 10% will be forwarded towards your annual dues for the top 1%. And the top 1% is where you want to be. That's where, I mean, we literally have like billionaires, politicians, and like we break stuff down. We'll get guys on the call like, hey, I'm a really important person in a really important country, and my name was on the news lately, but I'm an alcoholic and no one knows that. And I have to make a very tough decision politically, and I'm not in the right mind to do that. Guys, can we break this down? I'm like, oh my God, I'm having these types of conversations. Like
Yeah,
little old me, humble old me. So it's really cool. That's eventually where you want to be. You want to start hanging out with ass kickers in your life. So if you want to start, top 10% group is the way to go. Instagram at Jaren Scott. Follow my channel too, if you haven't already done so already. Now, time of publishing, it's just Jaren Scott, JarenScott. I am going to start pivoting in it, but my audience has become so accustomed to the content that I currently have that I'm going to take more of kind of a graduated approach. So I cover fitness, a little bit of personal finance, online dating is a big one. So I'm going to start leaning more into living abroad. I actually did a lot of my undergraduate and graduate academic research on considerations for going abroad. I've done a lot of consulting for companies that outsource. I spent last year in El Salvador building an outsourced sales team for a fintech company in the US. So I have a lot of experience in that. So I'm going to start taking my channel more in that direction, but I'll still cover the dating topics, but it won't be like red pill 101 stuff because there's so much of that stuff out there. It won't
yeah,
be it won't be like just general mindset stuff. It'll be more focused and specific to things I've already done and that I'm currently doing. So keep that in mind if you go ahead and subscribe. There's a lot of good stuff in store. I've got some big plans for myself. Every day I wake up and I'm 1% better than I was the day before. So compound that over a long time period, and the results can be quite shocking. So if you want to follow that journey, follow me on Instagram at Jaren Scott, YouTube Jaren Scott. I grabbed the name Gringo Guides. I think I'm gonna start taking it in that direction. Talk about more of the Mexico stuff. If Rich suggested the name to me, and at first I'm like, well, I don't know, because I'm stuck talking about like being a gringo in Mexico. But then I realized, well, no, guides is also a verb. So like I'm a gringo guiding people, so I can use that for broader type topics too. So it looks like that's the direction it's going. If you want to follow my journey and be a part of it, like Dylan said, participate. Let me know. Hey, I like in the back of my head, I'm just thinking, what would it be like to live in Mexico or live anywhere, not the U.S. or just have a life worth living and loving? How do I do that? Well, reach out to me. I won't have the exact answers for you, but I can certainly walk you through the process I did with myself when I became my own best friend. It's another topic I like that I didn't really touch on, but become your own best friend. Like I had a buddy one time. Yeah, he said, Jaren, like if you talk to me the way you talk to yourself, I would sock you in the face and I would never talk to you again. I'm like, oh, well, that's kind of a wake up call. Yeah, I'm kind of an asshole to myself. So me and my own internal dialogue, being my own best friend, just here's the process I went through. If any of this resonates with you, then go ahead and reach out to me and we'll get you on track, and we'll do it pretty quick. And if I don't have the answer, someone in that group will have the answer. And like I said, it's really just trying to get all the ass kickers in a room together, or aspiring ass kickers, and see where we can't take each other. But so far, it's been one of the best decisions I made in my life. Just start getting in these top 1% group is a big one. I'm in multiple mastermind type groups. I publish a lot of the same content, and then my group, the top 10%, where I take more of a leadership role, and we kind of run people through these processes together so they can actually stop being miserable, really, and start loving life.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Jaren. I'm really happy to have you on here. Looking forward to seeing you grow, seeing your groups grow, and looking forward to having you on more shows in the future. So I
Sounds
appreciate
good.
it.
Yeah, we'll have to get you on my channel too, because I need some more financial type content.
Deal. Deal.